Imagine this, a US aircraft carrier, a floating fortress symbolizing American power, is navigating the Red Sea, escorting vital commercial shipping routes through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. Suddenly it's struck, not by a rival superpower, but by the Houthis, a rebel group based in Yemen. The unthinkable happens. The carrier is critically damaged and sinks. The world holds its breath. This isn't just an attack, it's a provocation of historic proportions. A regional flashpoint instantly escalates into a global crisis. But what exactly would happen next? Let's begin with the attack itself. For the Houthis to successfully hit and sink a US aircraft carrier, a perfect storm of technology, intelligence and luck would be needed. They'd likely use advanced Iranian-supplied cruise or ballistic missiles, possibly with targeting assistance from external actors. The carrier's defenses, although robust, aren't invincible. A swarm-style attack, coupled with drones and decoys, might allow a few high-velocity anti-ship missiles to breach its layered defenses. The result? Catastrophic. Thousands of American sailors, airmen and Marines aboard. A loss of life not seen since Pearl Harbor or 9/11. News spreads instantly. Images of the burning wreckage flood global media. The message is clear, even the mightiest can bleed. The US response would be swift. The president, now under immense pressure from all sides, convenes the National Security Council. Congress demands answers. The Pentagon mobilizes. Within hours, airstrikes begin pounding Houthi positions across Yemen. But this wouldn't be a proportional response. No, the US would go for the jugular, decimating command centers, missile stockpiles, radar systems, and suspected Iranian proxy infrastructure. But here's where it gets dangerous. Iran, as the Houthis' primary backer, cannot stay silent. It condemns the strikes, places its military on alert, and threatens to retaliate if US forces strike Iranian assets. The Gulf states, caught in the middle, brace for impact. Oil tankers are rerouted, prices spike, warships reposition. The Red Sea becomes a powder keg. Meanwhile, the global economy is rattled. The Bab el-Mandeb Strait, through which 10% of the world's trade and 6 million barrels of oil pass daily, is now a war zone. Insurance rates for shipping skyrocket, tankers stall, oil surges past 120, then 150. Inflation, already a concern worldwide, rears its head again. Stock markets tumble, defense stocks rise, airlines struggle. The global supply chain, still fragile after COVID-19 and geopolitical tensions, strains to the breaking point. Major economies, from the EU to China, scramble to respond. China, heavily reliant on Middle Eastern oil, calls for restraint. Russia issues a statement of concern while quietly exploiting the turmoil for strategic advantage. For the US military, the sinking of an aircraft carrier is nothing short of an existential moment. Carriers have long been symbols of global reach and dominance. Losing one to a rebel group in Yemen would be a devastating psychological blow. It would trigger a massive review of naval doctrine. Are carriers too vulnerable in the age of hypersonics and drone swarms? Should the Navy move towards smaller, more dispersed fleets? Is asymmetric warfare the new dominant form of conflict? Pentagon war planners scramble. Allied navies begin rethinking their own investments. The sinking becomes a turning point, much like the sinking of the HMS Prince of Wales in World War II, signalling the end of an era. Domestically, the US faces an internal earthquake. Political opponents blame the administration for underestimating the Houthi threat. Protests erupt, some calling for war, others demanding restraint. Military families mourn, and the nation is plunged into collective grief and fury. An election season dominated by economic concerns is now refocused entirely on national security and foreign policy. Globally, trust in American invincibility is shaken. Allies in Europe, Asia and the Middle East question whether US protection is guaranteed. NATO calls an emergency session. Israel, fearing escalation, prepares for a multi-front war. Saudi Arabia and the UAE consider preemptive strikes inside Yemen to prevent further chaos. At this point, the world stands on a knife's edge. Two paths emerge. Path 1, escalation. The United States, enraged, expands its strikes. Iran retaliates, possibly with attacks on US bases or by encouraging Hezbollah and other proxies to engage. The Strait of Hormuz closes. Oil hits $200 per barrel. Israel becomes directly involved. Syria flares up. Iraq destabilizes further. This becomes a regional war with global consequences, perhaps even drawing in great powers like Russia and China. Path 2, containment. Recognizing the dangers, back-channel diplomacy kicks in. Oman and Qatar act as mediators. The UN convenes an emergency summit. The US delivers a crushing but limited blow to the Houthis, while Iran signals it won't escalate further, publicly condemning the attack while distancing itself from direct involvement. Tensions remain high, but full-scale war is averted. However, the world has changed. The most profound impact of this event wouldn't just be military or political, it would be psychological. The illusion of American military invulnerability would be shattered. The idea that non-state actors, using inexpensive weapons and asymmetric tactics, could take down the crown jewel of US power, an aircraft carrier, would resonate everywhere, from Hezbollah to North Korea, from cyber groups to anti-access/area denial strategists. The message would be clear. David really can wound Goliath. Militaries worldwide would prioritize drone warfare, hypersonics, anti-ship missiles, and electronic warfare. Defense spending would skyrocket. A new arms race, more irregular, more unpredictable, would begin. In the aftermath, international shipping routes are permanently altered. US carriers become less of a forward-deployed deterrent and more of a domestically guarded asset. The Middle East, never truly stable, is plunged into another decade of conflict and uncertainty. Yemen becomes a theatre of major power contestation, no longer just a civil war but a proxy battleground. The Houthis, regardless of what remains of them, become legend among insurgents, heroes to some, terrorists to others. Meanwhile, the US begins to rethink its entire strategy in the Middle East. Isolationism gains ground politically, but so does the argument for stronger global military deterrence. The future feels less like a continuation of the past and more like a chaotic, multipolar world of shifting alliances and unpredictable flashpoints. So what if the Houthis sank a US aircraft carrier? It wouldn't just be a headline, it would be a moment of rupture, an inflection point in global history. A single shocking act by a rebel group could unravel decades of military assumptions, redraw strategic maps, and light the fuse for wider war. It's a reminder that in today's world, power is no longer just about size or technology, but about agility, asymmetry, and the ability to strike from the shadows. And perhaps most chillingly, it would prove that even the mightiest empires are not immune to the chaos of modern warfare. If you found this analysis thought-provoking, help us reach more viewers by hitting the like button. Subscribe for more deep dives into the geopolitical events shaping our world, and don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments. What do you think the global fallout would be if such an attack really happened? Let's discuss.